Welcome to the Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. My name's Ward Simmons. I'm one of 6 Dharma leaders that rotate responsibility for leading on Wednesdays. Folks on Zoom, is that volume any better? It is better. How about now? Still okay? Great. Okay. Mystery solved. So it looks like we've got about 12 people on Zoom. Welcome to y'all, and about maybe 24 or 25 in the room. Welcome. Aren't we happy to be here instead of in the traffic or in a store or in a mall? What a great way to spend a Wednesday the week before the holidays. So this is an auspicious moment on the calendar. It's a time of change. For the last 6 months, the days, in case you haven't noticed, have been getting steadily shorter. And next week, when we're here for our meeting, the days will be getting longer. So at 10:03 Sunday morning, there will be this still point where things turn from shortening days to lengthening days. And what that brings to mind for me is the still point that we experience about 40,000 times a day when the in-breath turns to the out-breath, or the out-breath turns to the in-breath. But the solstice is a little different because it occurs a lot less frequently than 40,000 times a day. And so for the person with an average life expectancy, we will get to experience about 157 solstices. So let's pay attention the week ahead to this extraordinary moment. Check one off the list. How many we got left? So there's another auspicious feature about the calendar, and that's we're deeply into the holiday season. Traditionally, we think of that as a time of goodwill. And just like the solstice gives us the opportunity to be aware of this truth of change and turning, the season of goodwill is an opportunity to attend to a different truth, and that is a choice that we have. We can choose to abide in this state of goodwill or not. Now, as meditators, we understand that this mind training we're involved in makes us uniquely prepared to choose a state of goodwill. And so this evening, I'll be speaking about the choices that we make. Some of y'all will be familiar with this. Several decades ago, a group of meditators and scientists founded the Mind and Life Institute. And one of those founders was the Dalai Lama. So this is how the Institute's website describes its vision, the vision of its work. Science and contemplative wisdom together can advance human flourishing. By deepening the understanding of the human mind, we can spark the inner transformation needed to drive critical change in the outer world. An entire field of contemplative science and research has emerged, catalyzing scientific laboratories and applied research centers, creating new fields of study between and across disciplines, and reshaping how we understand the mind. So the Mind and Life Institute has led the way, but they're by no means the only organization that's focusing on this. As time goes on, more and more universities and different organizations are paying careful attention to this connection between contemplation and the mind. And the more we learn about the mind, the science of the mind, the more we learn that what the Buddha was teaching continues to be proven out scientifically. So he didn't have the tools that we have today to make the discoveries that he made. He made them based on his own experience. Several years ago, I was in a medical office, and I was reading a copy of a magazine while I was waiting. It was Scientific American. And I really liked what I was reading. And so I liked it so much I started subscribing. And last month's edition included what was to me an intriguing article. It's entitled The Neuroscience of Morality. And it's by a woman named Elizabeth Svoboda. And I'm going to learn a little bit more about her writing, because at the end of the article, it goes on to say that in October of 2024, they published one of her articles entitled The Empathy Incentive. So again, she's looking at empathy in a scientific context. But tonight, we're going to talk about the article from last month. The title is The Neuroscience of Morality, and she explores numerous well-known instances of people who are engaged in challenging ethical situations, moral situations. And she integrates into her article over a dozen research projects that she kind of uses as the basis for her article. And this falls squarely within the Buddha's path to awakening, the Noble Eightfold Path. 3 of the 8 path factors, as some of y'all will know, comprise the ethical behavior section of the path. So just to answer the question somebody might have, what's that got to do with meditation? When we refine our ethical behavior, we reduce or eliminate the regret and the rationalizing and all the stories we tell in our minds to kind of address our less than perfect ethical behavior. And that mental activity, when we clear that out to some extent, whatever extent we can, then that increases our ability to practice mindfulness and concentration, which is the foundation for the final group of path factors, the wisdom or insight factors, which is the, kind of the fruit of this whole practice. So it's very relevant to meditation practice. So I want to look at 3 specific teachings of the Buddhas as they relate to what is contained in this article. So the first, I want to read a quick quote from the Majjhima Nikaya. This is number 19, and this is what the Buddha said. Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of her mind. If she frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty, then her mind will incline to thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty. If she frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and kindness, her mind will incline to thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and kindness. So that seems kind of intuitive, but it can be awfully easy for us to lose sight of that. over time, we become habituated to our thoughts and our words and our deeds. And this process, the researchers refer to as gradual adaptation. So it's really important for us to pay careful attention to what we allow ourselves to become adapted to. So in the magazine article, here's a statement that the author makes. Brain and psychology researchers are delving into how slides down the moral slope begin and what keeps them going. Initially, we may be horrified at the thought of lying, cheating, or hurting someone. But as we engage in wrongdoing over and over, our brains tend to grow numb to it. It's harder to embezzle or kill the first time than it is for the 10th time. That sounds true to me. So many years ago, I had a personal experience where I saw this habituation taking place. I was on a board of a nonprofit. It was our local aid service organization here. And I was the treasurer. That's what they make you do when you're a CPA. And after a couple years, it was my turn to be president. And so a friend of mine who was on the board, who was an accountant, took over. And we were friends. We were social friends. And after a year or two of him serving as treasurer, I got a call from our auditors, and they said, "We got a problem. Our treasurer has given me a statement from the bank showing how much money's in the bank, and it's clearly been doctored." And as things unfolded, this friend who I'd been sitting across the table from, socializing with for the last year or two, had stolen $120,000 from this nonprofit, which in today's money is over $250,000. And I just couldn't, I still have trouble wrapping my head around it. And what happened is he habituated to it. He started with a very small amount of money because he was a little short, and he thought, well, I'm going to borrow this and I'll pay it back. And over time, he paid nothing back, and the amounts got bigger and bigger until it was unsustainable. So when I hear this author talking about how it gets easier and easier, that matches with what I observe. So another thought that comes to mind for me related to that, some of y'all may have seen a television ad that ran in our area around Thanksgiving. And it was while immigration and customs enforcement agents were very active here. And it shows an ICE agent coming home in uniform and his young daughter running up to him and joyfully saying, "Daddy, how was your day?" And the look on his face is such a pained and disgusted look. And then the advertisement cuts to these many disturbing scenes that we've all seen of ICE agents smashing windows, chasing crowds of frightened people, and making violent arrests. And at the end of this ad, the ICE agent in the video walks toward the camera and pulls down his mask, and it's this father. And in the background is his daughter's voice saying, "Daddy, how was your day?" And I think we see some of that habituation happening in our world around us, people that would never have thought about doing things they're doing now, that have gradually taken little baby steps and aren't comfortable anymore with where they are. So the second of the Buddhist teachings that this unfolding research continues to support is metta, or loving kindness. And our ability to practice metta is based on the foundational insight meditation practice of mindfulness. And as meditators, we know mindfulness is a result of training our minds to remain present for each moment of experience. And we contrast that with how the untrained mind operates, which is abandoning the attention to whatever wanders across our path. So maybe we smell donuts as we pass by a bakery. So rather than starting to tell a story about how good the donuts are going to be, or I wish I had one, I don't have any money with me, or gosh, I'm on a diet, none of that. Instead, we just think, okay, so I have a pleasant experience, I'm smelling this, it's pleasant, and then we let that go, and instead we're available to the next moment of experience. That's our mindfulness practice. And when we cultivate mindfulness, we open the door to skillfully working with what's happening in our minds. So these are a couple sentences from the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. With a boundless heart, one should cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. And in her seminal book on loving kindness, Dharma teacher Sharon Salzberg goes so far as to say, the proximate cause, or the most powerful conditioning force for metta to arise is seeing the good in someone. So if we can see the good in others, that is the most important feature in causing loving kindness to arise. Which correlates with what our author of this magazine article says. She says, in a 2023 study of moral judgment carried out in China, participants received 8 weeks of mindfulness training, including meditation. Compared with a control group, those who received the training were less motivated to earn money if doing so would harm others. Mindfulness practices may affect moral judgment in part because they promote a more objective outlook. It's often easier for practitioners to take someone else's view of a situation, which compels them to steer clear of harming others. Identifying with others helps people guard against moral numbness and the negative spiraling that follows. Identifying with others, or as Sharon Salzberg says, seeing the good in someone. So the third teaching that I noticed, and when I read this article, I noticed a lot of the Buddha's teachings throughout, but I wanted to pick a few. The third one is embodied in the monastic Sangha's structure and its rules of behavior. So the Buddha had all these people around him, and he had to have some rules of conduct. There are all these people doing different things, and so he established a process whereby the people in his community would come together twice a month on the full moon and the new moon, and each member would reflect upon their behavior over the last period, and then they would acknowledge any shortcomings in their ethical behavior. So the idea was and is that admitting to one's mistakes and agreeing to do better in the future is a way to grow and progress toward more skillful behavior. Our author in the magazine article observes, at an institutional level, one way to ward off downward moral slides might be to underscore the rewards of holding the moral line. In a Maastricht University study, participants whose bosses showed ethical leadership engaged in fewer corrupt acts. Once people decide to act with integrity, their resolve is often socially contagious. Researchers at Eastern Michigan University and elsewhere report that work groups where members openly endorse ideals such as honesty and fairness, individual employees are often more likely to speak up about the moral violations they see. So one piece of good news is this moral conditioning works in both directions. Just as the treasurer of the organization I was mentioning who embezzled money gradually acclimated himself to larger and larger amounts, we can also adapt ourselves to more and more wholesome patterns of behavior. I want to share one more story with you. I think it's relevant. This is the case of, and again, this is coming from the article, Aquilo Gunnell. He's a former Capitol police officer who defended the Capitol during the January 6th insurgency. Serving as a Capitol police officer on January 6th brought Gunnell to a key decision point. Defending the building in a gas mask and riot gear, he battled dozens of insurgents and sustained multiple injuries, including chemical burns and a smashed foot that required surgery. As he recovered, many people, and even some members of Congress, started spreading misinformation about what had happened at the Capitol that January day. Some said the incursion had been an Antifa-led protest, and others insisted the insurrectionists had been peaceful. Gunnell resolved to set the record straight. This is something in our history that shouldn't be kept quiet, he says. He agreed to talk to CNN about what he had seen and heard on January 6th, who he had encountered, what they had done, and to him and other officers. He was afraid of how people watching on TV, especially riot supporters, would respond, but he went through with the interview anyway. That first appearance led to a series of other public engagements, including testifying before Congress. Each time Gunnell told the truth openly, doing so felt a little bit easier, despite the danger he knew he could face. For the most part, he says, his experience speaking up has been positive. I could look at myself in the mirror and look at my son and say, hey, I did the right thing. So that built for him his first little scary moment. He built his confidence and allowed him to continue doing the right thing. So in closing, let me just say that there are a few things we can do to protect ourselves from poor ethical decisions. One is, when we make decisions under pressure, we're at higher risk, whether it's people pressuring us or time pressure. When we're under pressure, the more primitive centers of the brain are operational. And we're more likely to get a snap judgment or a fight and flight response. And when we remove the pressure, the higher functioning areas of the brain are involved. And with reflection, we temper these instinctive reactions and make more thoughtful decisions. Another step is to rehearse in advance how we'll respond to an ethical challenge. And this is an opportunity to align our actions with our deepest intentions. One more quote from this article. The stronger people's advanced intentions are to engage in certain types of behavior, a University of Sheffield meta-analysis shows, the more apt they are to follow through in real life, which aligns with the wise intention factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. And finally, we can adhere to a clear code of moral conduct. That's what the Buddha offered when he created the Vinaya for his monastic followers, their code of conduct, and the 5 lay precepts for us as householders: non-harming, non-stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not engaging in unskillful speech, and not becoming intoxicated. Being accountable for our actions relative to a clear set of ethical guidelines can give us the support we need to make wise choices. So as we go through this holiday season, let's remember to nurture the spirit of goodwill. It is our choice, and it's a choice that reverberates thereafter in every moment of our lives. I'll offer that for your consideration.